The 6 women in the jury of the George Zimmerman trial, they have been deliberating now for about 3 hours. Wait, the verdict. Getting important analysis from Zimmerman's lead attorney, Mark O'Mara. Insights you'll be seeing right here first on CNN. CNN's Martin Savage sat down with O'Mara before today's dramatic closing arguments, and they went over some of the most controversial moments of this trial.
You took, I think what some might consider risks during the trial, one of them being that you cross-examined a grieving mother.
Yes.
Any regrets on that?
No. I hope that people think, or I think, that I handled it properly and respectfully. I have handled, I think, 40 or so murder cases, and in every one of those murder cases, you're going to have some interaction with a victim's family.
You certainly would hope that your son Trayvon Martin did nothing that could have led to his own death, correct?
Had you done that before? Had you talked
Absolutely.
to a grieving mother in another case?
Many times. Many times, both in trial where I've cross-examined them, and certainly outside of trial in a courtroom when trying to work out something that I could. It is just one of the elements of being a criminal defense attorney, dealing with the victim's family, whether it's a victim of a burglary, a robbery, or in this case, a death. You try and do it with the sensitivities, but you still have to do it.
And you did Tracy Martin
Yes.
as well. And that one didn't seem to go quite so well.
So your words were, "I can't tell."
Something to that effect, but I never said, no, that wasn't my son's voice.
Well, I think that the state should have put Tracy Martin on. That's their witness. I think it was strange that they decided not to call the father of the victim, but they did so because of the very reason that I had to call him, which was that Tracy Martin told 2 cops who testified, 4 who were present, that when he listened to that tape, it was not his son.
But that's not what he said on the stand.
That is not, but it is what 2 cops said, and 2 other cops who were available to say that he said, "No, that's not my son's voice." Now, it's got to be extraordinarily difficult to be in Tracy Martin's shoes and to Sabrina Fulton's shoes. They have to be able to go through life believing in their heart and in their soul that that is Trayvon Martin's voice.
Is that what you meant when you asked, and I believe you asked this of Trayvon's mother, that she hoped to hear his voice?
How could you not? Because we know, being able to analyze it in the cold light of day, we know that one of 2 things were evident on that tape. Trayvon Martin was screaming for help, and George Zimmerman murdered him. 2, George Zimmerman was screaming for help because he was being battered by Trayvon Martin, and he reacted to that battering by shooting Trayvon Martin. If you're the mother, the friend, the father, how could you not want that to be the first alternative rather than the second?
But then you turned it on her by saying that, and if it isn't your son, then you must come to the recognition that your son was doing what George Zimmerman says he was doing.
And that's the other side of the same coin. Was that a question too much? Maybe I should look at the tape. I don't know. But I felt as though the jury had to hear and understand the sensitivities of what was going on in a grieving mother's mind when she's listening to a tape that meant one of 2 things.
Much has been made about race in this case. Where do you see race in this case?
I see race being injected into this case in the first week that it existed. And I see that it's never left this case, even though time and time again, race has been proven not to have been an element in George's consideration at that night. I see attorneys who say 4 weeks ago that this is the most significant civil rights trial of the century. And then I see a partner of his a week ago saying race has nothing to do with this case. So I only wish that they would have said race has nothing to do with this case in, let's say, March 15th or March 16th, which was the day that they heard the tape. Anytime before they allowed the pressures and the animosities to foment to the point where there was at least concerns over civil unrest, disobedience, riots, whatever you want to call it.
This case, to many, is a cause. It's not just a case. These would be people who are very much in support of Trayvon Martin, who believe that there was great wrong here. And in essence, that this is a civil rights case. And I mean that in the full sense of advancing civil rights. You are perceived as the man standing in the way of this civil rights case.
Right.
How do you handle that?
Very simply, I will walk over to that side, put my arm around those people, and walk with them on a civil rights issue. I've represented young black males for 30 years. I know better than most people, better than most of the people who are complaining, how young black males are treated in the criminal justice system, and we need to fix it. We need to address those problems. It's not just in the system, it's in the schools, it's in the churches, it's in the families, it's in the homes. We need to address it. Get your crosshairs off George Zimmerman, and I will join you. Keep your crosshairs on George Zimmerman, and don't tell me that I'm getting in the way, because you are. Because you're the one who's sitting back telling me that this is a civil rights case when George had nothing to do with civil rights. This was an unfortunate event between two people. I want to walk down that path. I want to have a conversation. I've been asking for that conversation for over a year. Let's talk about it. This is a great opportunity for that conversation. Even if we didn't do it right, even if George Zimmerman was not the poster child for racial improprieties towards young black males, now that the conversation has raised to the forefront, let's have it. But don't let that conversation override Mr. Zimmerman's rights to a fair trial. He's just not the racist you thought he was. And my fear is that now that they've connected that conversation, that acquittal is going to be seen as a negative for civil rights. Absolutely untrue.
Do you think that George Zimmerman, your client, if he's acquitted, what kind of life will he have?
Not a good one. I think he has to live mostly in hiding. He's got to be able to protect himself from that periphery that still believe that he's some racist murderer or acted in a bad way, and that you don't know who they are. You don't know if they're down the street or you don't know if they're across the country. I think that he's probably concerned about living still in Central Florida and never having a normal life.
His life will never be the same.
Never, ever, ever be the same.
Never, like, be able to go to work or have a regular job? Or...
I don't know how he gets a job where he is out in public without having the fear of somebody finding out he was.
You think someone will continue to want to hunt him even if a jury says you are not guilty?
Well, we know there are crazies out there. I know that there are people out there who don't listen to common sense, who don't act rationally. I can show you a couple of dozen emails from people who are vicious in their hatred for George Zimmerman. And for me, it's absurd, but they're there. So I don't know which is the one who's going to walk down the street at the same time George does. They know what he looks like. He doesn't know what they look like.
We also asked the prosecutors if they would like to speak with us this week. They declined CNN's request for now. They will speak with our sister network, HLN, after the verdict. By the way, during the next hour of the Situation Room, you're going to hear what else Mark O'Mara has to say, this time about the judge who's tried to keep a firm hand on all the lawyers. Once again, this is an interview first airing right here on CNN. Up next, Trayvon Martin's father. He also speaks to CNN and tells us what it's like to be in court sitting so close to the man who killed his son.